This is really interesting. This in the New York Times, this piece, this is by Monica Davey and Julie Bosman, and they're talking about Donald Trump's rally in Chicago. And this was written the day after. This was last Sunday. Elsewhere, Mr. Trump's security has tried to identify and exclude potential demonstrators before they enter his events. But large groups of protesters had waited in line for seats here. We're talking Chicago. And engaged in tense disputes with Trump supporters, even as the University of Illinois at Chicago Pavilion was still filling up. For more than an hour before the event was to begin, security teams led protesters out one by one, but many more remained, sparring with Trump supporters. In a statement, I'm assuming by sparring they mean verbally, but who knows? In a statement, Mr. Trump's campaign said that he, quote, has determined that for the safety of all the tens of thousands of people that have gathered in and around the arena, tonight's rally will be postponed to another date. On MSNBC, Mr. Trump said that after meeting with law enforcement authorities, quote, I felt it was just safer. I didn't want to see anybody get hurt. Right. On the other hand, a Chicago police spokesman said that city law enforcement authorities were not consulted and had no role in canceling the event. So, you know, one of the keys to conservative ideology, to the conservative mind, to conservative electoral success, one of the absolute keys to conservative electoral success is this myth of victimhood. We are the victims of an other. You know, they are doing this to us, and they are doing and the they, particularly if you can tie the they to a particular race or religion, it becomes, you know, very effective. And occasionally there's, you know, some factoids or some bits of evidence that can be used to support that, but it's not really necessary. It just although it works when it gets played out. I mean, you know, the burning of the Reichstag is you know, a great example when Marius van der Lubbe was his name. He was a Dutch schizophrenic who apparently had been helped by the Nazis. There was an underground passage from the Reichstag over to one of the buildings where several of the Nazis had their offices. And they apparently helped him set the Parliament building on fire. And then, of course, Hitler rushed over there as the fire was burning and got in front of the radio microphones that were broadcasting it live and said, "This is a sign from God that the nation needs strong leadership," referring to himself. I mean, he did the same thing with the burning of their equivalent of the Congress, of the Capitol building. He did the same thing with that George Bush did with 9/11. You know, look at this. We're victims. They've hurt us. They've attacked us. We've got to lash back. We've got to be 5 times more violent. We got to be 500 times more violent. We got to be 5 million times more violent. And this is not the way to run a democracy. This is, you know, this myth of national victimhood, this myth of we, the oppressed minority stuff. You know, it might crank up the base, but it's, you know, unless you can demonstrate some reality to it. And I'm not sure who. Well, you know, okay. So actually, there are some people who have been harmed by some of the policies that have been promoted. The problem is that they've got the who's promoting the policies wrong that Trump is pointing out. Like Trump is saying to his largely white working class and below voters, although ironically he gets a lot of votes from whites who earn over $100,000, which is interesting. But basically, you know, because everybody knows, you know, all the Republicans know, you know, the whole thing is a scam to protect rich people, right? But you know, he says to his troopers, you know, pretty soon they're going to start wearing all shirts of the same color or something, or armbands. You know, he says to them that we are the victims of these trade deals that have been negotiated by those awful people. Right. Well, you know, who are those awful people? And I mean, he doesn't point out that NAFTA passed the House and Senate with vast Republican majorities and small Democratic minorities. that more Democrats voted against NAFTA and most of the trade deals, basically, but in particular NAFTA. More Democrats voted against it than for it. It was the Republicans who pushed this stuff. Yeah, Bill Clinton signed it, but and pushed for it, but so was George Herbert Walker Bush. So they can say it was bipartisan, but that's not the way Trump is playing it. He's playing it like oh, China did this to us, or Mexico did this to us, and then he says, yeah, and they're going to pay for the wall. And then somebody yesterday or the day before said, how are you going to make them pay for the wall? And he says, I'm going to rebuild our military. Oh, really? You're going to threaten Mexico with a war if they don't pay for the wall? This is very statesmanlike. I mean, this is so impressively statesmanlike. Threaten the country on your border. I mean, the last time this happened, it was James Polk, and it was the Spanish-American or the Mexican-American War, and guess who was out there speaking out against that war, speaking out loudly against that war? It's Abraham Lincoln. I mean, this was like the defining issue for Abe Lincoln in the 1840s was the Mexican-American War. He was totally opposed to it. But in any case, it looks like Trump, they'll pay for the wall with this is the kind of stuff, and so that just feeds this "we're the victims" narrative, and so he never points out to his people that it isn't Mexico or China that's screwing the United States. It's our own politicians who did it on behalf of the transnational corporations and the billionaires, not on behalf of China and Mexico, but on behalf of the billionaires and the transnational corporations that are frankly exploiting, workers in those countries as well. And who are those folks? They're the elite of the Republican Party, and they are the elected officials of the Republican Party who are beholden to that elite, which is probably another reason why the Republicans are so pissed off at Donald Trump right now. He's not only spilling the beans about the long con, how all the Republican politicians are bought off. They won't talk about climate change because they owe it to the fossil fuel industry, et cetera. But he's also, he's just laying it out there.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-536-2370.
The tragedy is that then he gets people like Sarah Palin coming in behind him, kind of cleaning it up, and nobody realizes that he's ratting out his own party, except the party. To watch more clips from our programs, hit the Watch More Videos button over here, and please be sure to hit the handy-dandy subscribe button so you'll always be up to date. Tag, you're it.